Okay, I think that is a good spot to begin. Hi everyone. If you are just joining us, welcome. If you are a regular, also welcome. This is my first time hosting with the Red Wheelbarrow Collective. My name is Maneo Mohale. I'm a poet, and we are in the presence of many poets, but we're all here to welcome a new exciting voice on the landscape. I'm so excited to welcome Manthipe Moila. Um, and please let me know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but Manthipe Moila. Okay. Yeah. Welcome. We're gonna have it's pretty simple. We're just gonna have a reading from our featured poet and then have a small break, to which we'll open up for an open mic. But I'll pop in and out just to let people know what's up. But for now, I'm just gonna read the introduction and introduce our poet and then get out the way because I mean we're here to listen to our new poet. So, okay. Manthipe Moila was born in 1994 and is from Johannesburg. She holds a BA honors in English literature from Rhodes University, Wakanda. Her poetry has been published widely, including in New Contrast in 2035 Africa, in the Kalahari Review, Tupelo Quarterly, Agbowó, A Longhouse, and Saranac Review. She's currently based in Seoul, South Korea, surrounded by too many houseplants. I love that. And her first collection of poetry is called Rootbound. And I'm sure we're going to hear all about it. So, welcome, Manthipe, and I'll just get out the way and let you take over.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. To everyone who's participating. Uh, my name is Munti and I'm a little bit nervous to read, but I'm excited to introduce you to Rootbound as well as to some of my favorite poems from some of my favorite authors. I think I will begin with that dedication poem that opens Rootbound, and this is really a poem to my younger self. I wasn't actually going to read it today, but I changed my mind. Okay. The poem is called Dedication 1. Today you happen upon a tweet by a white girl your age. 3 things black girls don't have: long hair, a boyfriend, fathers. You ponder the gush of girls turned ghosts, the dust that gathers them, absence marking the spot. You wonder at this world where blackness in girl form is a round, rotating emptiness that only holds in a disappearing hand. Put it in a portrait, and there a hole appears. Put it on a path, the hole appears. And in a home, it breaks, like a strand breaks, or a tooth. Make it the size of this room, and it seems there is no one here, sitting at this desk, writing this poem. That was the first poem in the collection, Dedication. Um, I think I want to do something a little bit different. I will return to Rootbound, but I want to read from a prose poetry collection by Han Gang. She's quite a famous author here, well, worldwide, but uh, I haven't really dug into her body of work because I'm still working on my Korean to be good enough. I have read her prose poetry collection called The White Book, and so I would like to read from that. I read it in English, but I do have the Korean here, so I think I want to read in Korean first and then read the English translation. Is that okay? Is that allowed? Do we have the tolerance for that?
Absolutely.
I hope
Yes,
so.
please.
Okay, and yeah, okay, good. I'm just gonna take a couple of poems from the first collection that I like, and I'm not even sure if the opening uh, part is a poem or just an introduction, but she writes so beautifully that it reads like a poem, so I'm gonna read that. And it introduces the concept of the book. 긴 것에 대해 쓰겠다고 결심한 봄내가 처음 한 일을 몽롱한 만든 것이었다. 정보, 대내옷, 소금, 눈, 거름, 월, 살, 파도, 광목련, 흰색, 하얗게 웃다, 백지, 흰개, 백발, 수월, 한 단어씩 적어갈 때마다 이상하게 마음이 흔들렸다. 이 책을 꼭 완성하고 싶었고, 이것을 쓰는 과정이 무엇인가를 변화시킬 줄 것 같다고 느꼈다. 한부의 발을 흰 용고, 고기 덕을 흰 고추 같은 무엇인가가 필요하겠다고. 하지만 며칠이 지나 다시 몽롱을 읽으며 생각했다. 어떤 의미가 있을까? 이 단어들 들여보는 일엔 활로 철연을 크면 슬펐거나 기억하거나 새된 소리나 나는 것처럼 이 단어들로 심장을 문지르면 어떤 문장들이건 흘러올 것이다. 그 문장들은 사이에 흰 고추 덮고 숨어도 괜찮은 걸까? 질문에 대답하기 어려워 시작을 미루었다. 8월부터 이 낯선 나라의 수도로 잠시 옮겨와 새를 얻어 살기 시작했다. 2달 가까이 시간이 더 흘러 추워지기 시작한 밤, 익숙하고도 지독한 친구 같은 편두통 때문에 물 한 컵을 데워 알약을 삼키다가 답답하게 깨달았다. 어딘가로 숨는다는 거 어차피 가능한 일이 아니었다는 것을. 시간의 감각에 날카로울 때가 있다. 몸이 아플 때 특히 그렇다. 14살 무렵 시작된 편두통은 예고 없이 위경련과 함께 찾아와 이상을 경직시킨다. 해왔던 일은 모두 멈추고 통증을 견디는 동안 한 방울씩 떨어져 내리는 시간 연분화를 뭉쳐 만든 구슬을 같아. 손끝이 스치며 피가 흐를 것 같아. 숨을 들이쉬며 한순간씩 또 살아내고 있다는 사실이 뚜렷하게 느껴진다. 일상으로 돌아온 뒤까지도 그 감각은 여전히 그 자리에 숨죽여 서서 나를 기다린다. 그렇게 날카로운 시간의 모서리 시시각각 갱신되는 투명한 명량의 가장자리에서 우리는 앞으로 나아간다. 살아온 만큼 시간에 아슬아슬하게 한 발을 디디고 의지가 개입할 겨를 없이 소슴없이 남은 한 발을 허공으로 내딛는다. 특별히 우리가 용감하게 해서 아니라 그것밖에 방법이 없기 때문에 지금 그 순간도 위태로움을 너는 느낀다. 아직 살아보지 않은 시간 속으로 쓰지 않은 책 속으로 무모하게 걸어들. Okay, and now I'm gonna read it in English. In the spring, when I decided to write about white things, first thing I did make was a list. Swaddling bands, newborn gown, salt, snow, ice, moon, rice, waves, ulan, white bird, laughing whitely, blank paper, white dog, white hair, proud. With each item I wrote down, a ripple of agitation ran through me. I felt that, yes, I needed to write this, and that the process of writing it would be transformative and would itself transform into something like white ointment applied to a swelling, a gauze laid over a wound, something I needed. But then a few days later, running my eyes over that list again, I wondered what meaning might lie in this task, in peering into the heart of these words. If I sift those words through myself, sentences will shiver out like the strange, sad shriek of the bow that draws from a metal string. Could I let myself hide between these sentences, veiled with white gauze? It was difficult to answer, so I left the list as it was and put off anything more. I came abroad in August to this country I've never visited before, got a short-term lease in a flat in its capital, and learned how to draw out my days in these strange environs. One night, almost 2 months later, when the season's chill was just beginning to bite, the migraine set in, viciously familiar. I washed down some pills with warm water and realized quite calmly that hiding would be impossible. Now and then the passage of time seems acutely apparent. Physical pain always sharpens the awareness. Migraines that begin when I was 12 swoop down without warning, bringing with them agonizing stomach cramps that stop daily life in its tracks. Fast is left suspended as I concentrate on pain, sensing time's delicate drops as razor-sharp gemstones grazing my fingertips. One deep breath drawn in, and this new moment of life takes shape, distinct as a bead of blood. Even once I have stepped back into the flow, one day melding seamlessly into another, that sensation remains ever there in that spot, waiting for a child. Each moment is a leap forwards from the brink of an invisible cliff, where time's keen edges are constantly renewed. We lift our foot from the solid ground all of our life lived thus far, and take that perilous step out into the empty air, not because we can claim any particular courage, but because there is no other way. Now, in this moment, I feel that vertiginous thrill course through me as I step recklessly into time I have not yet lived, into this book I have not yet written. Um, I'm returning to Rootbound, and I'm so grateful to have the book in my hands because I am based in Seoul, and getting my author copies was a mission and a half, but we persevered, and I discovered a poem called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird by Wallace Stevens, and I became obsessed with it. I couldn't stop reading it. And so uh, I wrote a poem after that one called 7 Ways of Looking at the Story of Us. It's a listed poem, so I will begin with one. On row after row of jacarandas, aphids take in tree sap and excrete honeydew. 2. Purple canopies flutter as though they are eyes. 3. There are eyes everywhere in that night-shattered home where the suitcase fills as the man lightens. 4. Once plucked from its stem, the flower cannot return alive. 5. A light man weighs the same as a single purple flower. 6. To stuff a bag with clothing is to fill a room with silence long after one is gone. 7. Once late, men find it hard to return. Um, we have a few collections from authors I admire, and it feels like such a full circle moment because actually Maneo is one of them, and I absolutely love this book. So I'm gonna read the opening poem from Everything is a Deadly Flower. Um, I found that despite the simplicity of the language, this poem kind of knocked me off my feet and stayed with me for a very long time. It's called Gazati, which means sun. In your mother's red golf, you ask her what Benoni means. Son of my sorrow, hearing the sun instead, you turn the word over in your mind like a coin. Ghosts are living in the mine dumps as your mother drives you home. Honeycomb mountains are brittle. Tomorrow, you ask her for a crunchy after school. Like all the names of the Bible, Benoni sounds ancient, out of your mother's magic mouth. Magic, magic. You are still small enough to hide inside the good bookstore's paper pages. You do not know yet what you are, have not yet had the Leviticus angle that you recognize pick. For now, the Bible is a hand drum of women draped in white and blue. There's a home in a marked garage. There are women made of clouds and ocean. They make terrifying sea white music. Schoolboo. The plastic bottom of everything that has a heart. Shells and bottle tops on ankles. How neatly old. How neatly old and new gods sit together. In school, you meet a man named Cecil John, and learn the word pioneer. Turn the word over in your mind like a coin. Your mother is a witness. Your mother is a pioneer, not yet knocking on doors to tell people about the good news. You wonder if Cecil was a witness too. Wonder on whose doors he knocked, for which God, to spread what good news. Love that poem. Okay. So, uh, when I was writing the collection, I was wont to listen to a lot of to a lot of poetry, and I found a channel, and there was this woman reading a poem she wrote about her mother. I think the title is Teaching My Mother, Teaching My Mother How to Speak English, or something similar to that. Um, and she did something very interesting with the including a line about how to conjugate love. And Rootbound is a book about many things, but at the core, it's a book about loss. And so I wrote a poem called Conjugating Loss, where I played with a similar kind of concept and a similar kind of technique in the writing. Conjugating loss. I'm trying to lose my loss, like I lost him. He lost his way to me. We lost our breathing breaths. I let loose my loss in the house. It makes a noise like an angry child. I try to place it on the table. It kicks. It screams. My family cannot look me in the eyes. I have lost my sense of the room. I might lose all those who tire of this leitmotif. I too have lost interest in the opera of it all. I want to pull loss out of the mouth where it sits like a milk tooth that won't give. The pain is louder than it should be. I wish I could hush it to sleep. I hope loss loosens one day, though by then I am certain I will have lost too much. I'm gonna read another poem called Jacaranda Mimosifolia, and um, I love the jacaranda season in Johannesburg and Pretoria. I could not get that out of my mind. So this poem was born out of loss, yes, but also a marveling of beauty. Jacaranda mimosifolia, you have given up your abandonment, the way a boy jumping into a river gives up his shoes. You have given up your hurt, your want, that ancient skin, that old wound. There are moments like this when you walk the streets of Johannesburg with friends or family, bare of yourself, crushing the fallen flowers beneath your school shoes. You do not know you are practicing forgiveness, nor do you know it'll all be for naught. The trees bloomed in days ago, and you are smelling time already gone, a belated world of violet, one that your father will slip into and never return from. Mhm. Another collection that I really loved and drew heavily from when I was writing Rootbound is Milk Fever by Megan Ross. I absolutely love this book. And I'm gonna read one of my favorite poems called Armageddon Summer. It begins with, sorry, I'm a bit sleepy. It's 3 in the morning here. Okay, Armageddon Summer. I sewed your name into my heel. I was 15 and a fool. I let it swim under my skin and breathe smoke into my veins, confusing the heat with something living, not a dead star orbiting a wet galaxy. I didn't know then that we were rivers, that we would trace our blood to the same source and swim south towards the ocean, that you would ragged tooth this world from my body and spit helium into my blood-wetted lungs. Did I somehow mistake your fist for love and eel it inside my mouth, press my anemone tongue onto your heliotrope teeth? Or did we simply burn our December skins, relishing their Coca-Cola blanche and shining pink, small eyes blinking for the first time inside, each one you cut while begging for voice? The fetid blisters cursed to scales, our slashed wrists resisting the gills we longed for, tempting as vodka, broken as glass. We lost our legs to tails, wrote our names in next day vomit, lone holography. That was the summer we closed around each other like stone walls, thinking love immortal, as if we were speaking the language of our futures and not the ancient light of stars. I didn't know that in this drowning world our skins are salt and desert is the song of girls unborn who soon dream of their own small deaths. We thought mood rings fair trade for mulberries, laddered arms friendship true price. We split our lot with fish and left our bodies to the sun. Okay, I'm gonna read another poem from Rootbound. It's called Faces. On some days, the sky is a mirror I cannot reach. Touching it would be like grazing your frail face. The river looks like an ocean, though there are no oceans here, just as there are no fathers. On other days, everything has a face. The clocks, the shoes, bodies of water. I picture yours and my mind dissembles. It gives you frailty. It gives you a second chance. It surrenders my blank stare at your guarded gate. We are only a stone's deft throw away from a small fracture, 2 stones from a splintering world where you are a man with many faces, many lives, and I am in all of them. Okay. The poem right next to that is a language poem, which I'm a bit nervous to read, but I think I'm gonna give it a go. It's called Home Language. A friend asks you how to say she in Sesotho, and in your haste to grab for the word, you slip into a world thick with honey, and your words are like teeth dissolving in the sugar that constrains your tongue. How to say, it is always too late to reach the words. You want and want and want to wretch language, if that's what it takes. Ulahlekile, she is lost. Haatsebi, she doesn't know. Kimosadi, she is a woman. You don't say she in Sesotho. You rebuke. Otletsitswikiri, she is covered in sugar. Haatsebi, the air glows with her desperation. She is Ulahlekile, a woman who claws for words. Ulahlekile. Oh, not me changing my mind on the fly about the poems I want to read. When I first moved to Korea, I thought that 14 degrees was winter. I thought that was dead cold, and I could not survive anything colder than that. Boy, was I in for a This poem is called First Winter. Cold moves through the room, an apparition. You pace, calling it a dance. With a child, you went to show cold for something you swallowed when your hurting got the best of you. Cold is only interested in turning your palms the color of pus or bending you into itself. You are well bent, like a river that stopped moving. You beg cold to take you out or leave. It nearly bares its teeth. I'm currently rereading Mama Seko by Tabile Makue. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And I love it. Mm, mm. It has a really beautiful language poem in here. I'm not gonna attempt that one. Uh, Not for the life of me will I attempt one. Let me read some. While it's outside. Okay. The first poem I want to read from this collection, Mama Seko, is inside. There are trees in our house, swinging black, swinging blue, screaming, needing. Trees and names will break your house when too close. These are for the neighbors outside in the day, eating sour fruit. And it's followed by outside, which is kind of a surrealist poem. And I love surrealist poetry. Outside, my mother undresses by accident. She pours herself out, and I catch her with my mouth down the desert hallway in my throat. She finds a body I borrowed once by accident. I have my mother in my lungs. My grandfather breaks out of his torso onto the floor. My grandmother trips over him. She bleeds out into my mother's ear. My mother has her mother in her windpipe, a magician. She smokes herself into a potion. My mother has drunk in her nose. I am sorry, I am hungover. My mother's body is intoxicated. I stumble out in my sleep. and you tuck me back in by accident. You undress me, and all the alone falls out. The next poem I want to read um, is from Rootbound once again. And in Korea in the spring, there's this phenomenon called Pangsa, where there's a very fine yellow dust that blows in from a different country, and it kind of like hangs in the air. It's really bad for the lungs, and it's a stark yellow color. And so this yellow dust will hang in the air, and then when it rains, shoo, it like comes down, and everything is stained yellow in a way that's really striking. It's a striking color. It looks like it shouldn't be a color that is from nature. It's so saturated. Um, yes. So I was writing about that phenomenon, and I was writing about home and the things that we're scared to say when we speak to our loved ones, especially those of us who live far away from home and want to give the impression that everything is okay. The poem is called Unsaid, Bangsa. Instead of the dust is a harsh yellow that stains everything after each rain. Lately there is something caught in my throat, and it threatens a din that will shatter even the wailing of a mourning creature. Instead of, it gathered speck by speck. Sometimes when I speak, it comes out in a noxious puff that sinks to the ground and captures the footprints of those walking away from me. Instead of, when I was young, I was so afraid of the sun, lest it strip me of my yellow. But now there are days where I'm a pit, where yellow collects and layers the length of my throat, the pockets of my lungs. Instead of, did you know that the sun is not yellow? It's all the colors, all of them. I smile a white smile. I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Not sure how I'm doing for time. How much time do I have left?
You're still doing really well. Don't worry about it. I'll let you know. I'll send you a little message when you have I'll give you a 10-minute warning.
It's not a bit long, but um, I know you're not supposed to have favorites if you have literary babies, but this is one of my favorite literary babies. It's called A Korean Woman Teaches Her Grandchild to Count. She points at the motorcycles parked along the subway and shouts, "Ilgop," at the seventh. The boy approximates, "Eagle," and you imagine the reflection of color that breaks open in them joy, the boy, the woman, wind-borne bubbles against the sky as it opens you to your own dearth. The scene is now a garble of gesticulation, and the triumph of y'all enters you not as sound, but as a soft heat. The closest you can get to 10 in Sesotho is taro. To heat, mullo, is in fire, as in there is only a lick left, only memory, only time. The time in your sister's nduma, when the wick would inflame until the seventh try, and finally your sister lit the mbepo and pulled on your deceived grandmother, her voice reverie, her speech spotless, and yours like a dappled leaf, clutching onto the last fleshes of bread, dying, nearly dead. You had forgotten to press your words tight between two pages, thinking nothing of it, not even, here is a path you might uncover to find your way back. Instead, you turned to find the past had recoiled so far You could only approximate a course to all the words that had fallen out and extend a trembling hand until your sister said, "It's okay, you can do it in English." Freckled in shame, laying your head on your lap, you opened your mouth to speak. Okay, I have another favorite literary baby. I think in part because I am a big plant mama, and one of my favorite plants of all time is the Monstera deliciosa plant, any form of Monstera. I have a big one here, which I had to chop. I had to chop her and put her in water, but she's doing really well and she's beautiful. So, um, I can put her down and figure that out in the morning. Anyway, this poem is called Monstera deliciosa, and um, it actually has very little to do with the plant and very much to do with uh, when you're in that awkward position, very uncomfortable position of having to speak at each other because you don't quite understand each other, even if the two people speaking are people who love each other. Monstera deliciosa. Evening, you think of your aunt's magnificent garden and want her to teach you how to get more perforations in your monstera, though you desire to speak only about nodes, the unfurling of the leaves, aerial roots. And she might ask if you ever think of starting a family, and you about propagating in water, and she about how often you think about Jesus, and you about how to keep the leaves from drowning, and she about when you are coming home, and you about the leaves, their sheen. How did she get them to grow so big? I'm gonna read a poem called Questions to Ask ChatGPT because it feels very topical. I was fascinated with the idea that people have or try to have kind of existential conversations with chatbots. And I wondered to myself, if I ever tried to use it like that, what would I ask? Um, sure, okay. Well, the last poem that I read was from Rootbound. And so far I've read from Everything is a Deadly Flower by Maneo Mohale, and Milk Fever by Megan Ross. I've also read from Han Gang's The White Book, and Tabile Makoe's Mama Seko. Rootbound is my book. That's what I'm currently reading from. Sorry if I wasn't clear about where the poems were coming from. Okay, questions to ask ChatGPT. 1. Super. The leaves flutter towards the exit, as if to usher me out. Earlier on my path, Earlier my path was carpeted by them, yet now they tumble forward, hushing softly. Note, can someone be both dead and alive? 2. There are days where I feel I'm a leaf, its midrib off center, like I was born pointing in the wrong direction, my veins mangled and stark. Note, If I were a leaf, would you carry me? How far? For how long? 3. Some homes have serrated edges, are always dying of hunger. Pay up, pay up. This is their song. It is never a bird. It's pay up picking up where it left off. Clear notes. Note. How do I stop wishing home were her date? A hushed thing I could flutter towards without fear of being crushed. Right. I'm gonna read a poem of mine called Train to Dewa. I guess this was my attempt at a surrealist poem. Dewa in Korean means conversation, but there's also a physical place just outside of Seoul called Dewa. And you can ride the train from Seoul to Dewa. Train to Dewa. I chase after you as you get on the train to Dewa. There is a crowd of people between us. I tear your name from my mouth, but all that comes out is bird song. Thinking I am a bird, the crowd begins to hiss. I peck away at them. When I get to the train door, it opens to a field of snow where your shoe prints are vanishing. I curse the snow for turning you into a spectre, and in response, it falls more feverishly. It makes so much silence, you would think the world was ending. I'm now going to switch to Sarah Lubala's History of Disappearance. This is the last non-rootbound book that I'll be reading from. And I'll read the last poem in the in the collection called Desertion. Sometimes I dream you're already gone. I wander through your leaving, broken necked in the arms of its shadow, heartsick and delirious, widowed before your death. You say love, and a trapdoor opens, inexorable and ravenous. In the wet mouth of fear, I dare not say the word out loud. I dare not think it. I've grown tired of walking with the knife in my hand, but the string of kin going or gone in circles a long road. They pass through me and hound me. They bang on the windows when I am asleep. They tap on the door. I trade these desertions for anything. Tattered clothing, a scrap of day, a stone, thin smoke. I am a soft animal, only a shadow of a girl braced against all the ways I can be hurt. To love is to confess the need of it, and I do, but I cannot be my mother, faithful to her torturer, begging for a crust of bread. We do not belong to each other. I belong to the alphabet of everything, to the valley of vowels, to myself. I think I'm going to read one of, oh, just for clarity's sake, one more time. That was from Sarah Lubala's The History of Disappearance. Oh, A History of Disappearance. Uh, I kind of forced myself to write a couple of love poems because I didn't want my first poetry collection to be all gloom and doom, and I wanted there to be a note of hope and love, and I also love love poems. So this one is called Walking Home Thinking of Love. On the way home from swimming class, street lights along the walking path are like dragon blood trees, erect little bodies open to the sky, and another lesson in how to open the body. Despite my terror, I want his damp and slick, So I do it, throw wild and dive into him, finally boundless, spreading further and further apart from myself, buoyant, floating upward, until I am a celestial body, seeing now the lights along the walking path are celestial bodies too, lighting my way to a trail where something awaits, the two of us, hand in hand, now one hand, now a walking path, now a dragon blood tree, now vaster than every sky, every galaxy. The poetry collection very much centers our speaker grappling with the loss of her father, but I also wanted to give mothers some love. So I wrote a poem called Monstera Deliciosa Variegata, which I love Monstera Deliciosa Variegata plants. They're so beautiful. They're stunning. You should look them up. Monstera Deliciosa Variegata. In the photograph, a woman dances, and at the knees. She is satined in silver and light, as light as a head free of hair, light as starlight in the city. If I were to suspend time to this quivering melody, could I avoid the sinking world and all of its gravity? What I find behind the wall of the kitchen or in the back garden or music? Ma, I wish to make you a variegated world with enough green to sustain us all, enough white to stun, and a pattern that makes everyone marvel at the mystery of how things turned out this good. Okay, I'm gonna read a poem that I wasn't supposed to read. I opened with Dedication 1, which is the opening poem of the collection. And so I'm going to read the final poem, which is a second dedication. It's called Dedication 2 because I'm so good at naming things. Today you sit with Kay on a rooftop in Hebangchang, and the buildings around you are like mountains. Namsan Tower pointing skyward as though to command them higher. Your fingers curl and you think, Shaba, mountain, be happy. Think Hebang, liberation. Chon, village. Eventually, Kay finds you seats inside, where you write while looking out the window, mountain after mountain protruding into view. Taba, Taba. Later, you will melt the wax beads and seal this poem inside, entrust it to the ocean of time, hoping that one of our future selves grabs it from the depths and opens it to find, Taba, you are here, some kind of freedom. Hmm. One more? One more poem?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think the final poem for the day will be a poem called Mewaka. Mewaka is my mom in Sesotho. One, you fill into the room like a pool of sunlight in late autumn. Your hearty laugh, your ready smile, your face a place of treasure. Two, when you ululate, your voice rings clear through, as though you are calling to some other world. Perhaps you are. your mother to hers. 3. It carries your voice like you carried me when you cast your first ballot. You, the woman who breaks the gray sky and lines the clouds in brilliant white. 4. You are named after a father who clears the way. Pachuma Pasi, Palin Tika Chamayembe. Your eyes hazelnut crowned by green, an opening to the world. One more for real friend. That's one. I just need to find it. This one is called Jeju. A wooden door opens to a white rooftop terrace overlooking the water. Still, autumn refuses to alight. The light is almost too much to bear. How do they bear it, those tetrapods? The sea, what is it like to absorb wave after wave and stay standing? I remember a time I was so sad I could hardly stand my life. But the tangerines, I say, but my sticky fingers wet with juice, but the wind that lifts my heavy afro. I am tickled, I am dizzy, there is so much light it almost hurts.
Thank you so much. Um, I would love everyone just to join us in a sweet little round of applause in whatever way. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to ululate. But thank you so, so, so much, Manti. It's been a wonderful experience just being led through a garden of poems. Your poems have such a delicacy to them that they're so they feel like snowflakes, and they are all so incredibly unique and delicate. But there's such a power to your voice, and it was such a gorgeous evening just to spend some time amongst your houseplants. I'm looking at a little thing about unmuting yourself. I'm gonna let you give you permission now. So, okay, you are able to unmute yourself now. You should be. So yeah, if you and I think now I'd like to open up for a short little Q&A. So for anyone that just joined us a little bit late or a little bit later, we had a really fantastic reading by a new poet, Manthipe Moila. We're going to have a short little Q&A and then a 5-minute break, and then an open mic after that, 2 rounds of poems. So if you have poems to share, they can be your poems, they can be anyone else's poems. It's a very safe space here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute. I'm really happy to go first because I have a lot of questions as well. And I see that Mary Edwards has a raised hand. I will call on you just now. If you don't mind, Mary, I just have a quick question just to set us off. Um, it's a really beautiful experience to kind of go through so many languages, and I wanted to, as a Sesotho speaker as well, an imperfect Sesotho speaker, it's really wonderful to hear you incorporate language into your poems, and to hear you talk about language poems. But I want to know, as someone um, who speaks Korean, what's the similarities, if there are any similarities, between Korean and Sesotho?
Interesting. I think that one of the main similarities is that the lack of pronouns. I mean, technically, if you want to force it, there is a way to have like he, she pronouns and they, them pronouns, but like in regular speaking, you actually have to gauge who the person is talking about based on context, or people use each other's titles to refer to each other. And so um, that's interesting. I think my language poem was trying to kind of point out that, not all languages operate in the same way. I couldn't find the word for she and because we don't really have that. Um, and so, yeah, other than that, I can't really think of too many similarities. Uh, yeah, Korean is is a very difficult language, and I learned it with English being my most comfortable language, and so the grammar is inverted. The verbs are at the end, and so it's very interesting to get lost in a sentence because somehow Korean speakers know what they're gonna say from beginning to end almost, or like they work their way around it. I don't know necessarily what I'm gonna say, and so not having the verb be the first or second word out of my mouth means that, yeah, I get lost a lot in language. I used to get frustrated with it, but I think there's some poetry in there actually.
Thank you so much for that answer. Mary, go ahead and ask your question. There are other raised hands. I'm going to say Mary first, and then Ed, and then Daniela.
Yeah, that was a great question. I was also interested in that, having lived in Lesotho for a while and learned the language a little bit, and then hearing Asian languages, I sort of kind of hear that there's a similarity in the structure and in the pronunciation, or the sounds of the language. Somehow they ring. There's a ring in them. So I was going to ask, what drew you to Korea? Was it just sort of an accident or work, or were you actually drawn there for maybe some unknown reason? But that would be interesting to know. And just your poetry, I feel like it is. Well, and how long have you been there? Because your poetry seems to have been influenced by the culture, or the language of the people, and it's really fascinating, and it's beautiful, really beautiful poetry, and as you were saying, very sensitive and powerful at the same time. So I'd like to know that, if you could tell us a bit more. Thank you.
So much, Mary. I've been living in Korea for about 7 years now, and the main draw was that I did want to live outside of South Africa and teach English in Asia. And so I was looking at a couple of countries. Uh, my my answer is a little bit embarrassing, but kind of. Uh, I stumbled onto a K-drama online and I binged watched it, and I thought that the language sounded so beautiful. And so I did some research on it, and the alphabet system is quite phonetic. It's unique in that in the past, Koreans used hanja, which is like Chinese characters actually, to write in Korean, which is mad and confusing. And for the common people, it made written language, quite inaccessible. And so a king called Sejong created an alphabet system that was super phonetic. And so I thought, oh, it's phonetic. It's going to be easy to learn. Haha, joke's on me. You learn how to read the basic alphabet, and then you slapped in the face by grandma. But yeah, having lived here for 7 years, I have been deeply influenced by Korean language and Korean culture. And I am a poet who, at this stage in my writing career, I'm drawing a lot from my environment. And so I'm happy that that comes through. And I hope I answered each portion of your question.
Yes, thank you. Kia liboa.
Hello.
Malebo Mary, I think we'll have our second question from Ed.
Hi, Manthipe. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi. I can't turn my video on, but I don't know if that's just with the settings, Maneo, but yeah, I loved your reading. I think what moved me especially was the poems where you conjugated loss in relationships, and I guess I'm a sucker for that kind of writing. Sorry. I love poems that somehow crystallize, clarify what went down, and do that in a very layered way, like the poem that you sent in. And there I am. Hi. So I really have comments. One of the things that struck me about many of the poems was the way that you was the arresting imagery for one, and the way that you run with an idea and sort of weave back to it. It was there in the conjugating loss poem, and it was there in the poem for your mum at the end. Yeah, when you ululate as if you are actually calling to some other world. Perhaps you are. It just one line that I remembered or wrote down. So yeah, just to say thank you, and very excited to discover. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
And I think we have one more question from Daniela. Go ahead.
Hi. First of all, Manti, oh my gosh, that was so gorgeous. You said, what was it? You said that you're trying to lose loss, and I was, oh my heart, I can't. So yes, bravo to you for your brilliant reading. I'm so excited to get your book, all the things. So I guess my question is around what you were saying about love poems. You said that there was like an apprehension to write them, or just that you hadn't written them much, or what have you. And I guess I was wondering what your approach is to writing the love poem. Like, is there a particular framework that you sort of enter through to be able to like get to that? For example, I have a poem. It was supposed to be a love poem, but it starts up about like trying to jump into the water from like a rock or a cliff, and then it like filters through that, but then filters through getting sepsis, which then at the end is the only moment that it mentions love. And you see if you go back, like, okay, this all does have to do with love, right? So I had to go through all of these filters to just say like, I love you, right? So it's like, how do you approach that? Right? Love is hard. What is this? I don't know. So how do you approach the love poem? Is there like a filter that you have to go through, or what have you?
Yeah, I think my apprehension or like the difficulty with love poems is that hmm, it's it's kind of hard to pull one off, I think, without sounding overly sentimental or without it being overly simple. And so my approach to love poems is I kind of try to draw from my physical environment as much as possible. And I try to um, almost like use nature as like a distancing device a little bit so that it's not, just to like tamper down any potential of sentimentality. So it's actually kind of similar to what you described about jumping off a cliff and this and this and this. I mean, the love poem I read had dragon blood trees, and it had the galaxy, and it had celestial bodies. When it was really me trying to say, I feel safe and I love you. Quite interesting. I do want to experiment further with love poems and see if I can get past my apprehension. I think love poems are incredibly difficult to tackle, but when they're done well, wow, are they gorgeous.
Is it fine if I say one more thing? Is that fine? I don't know. Okay, cool.
Of course, yeah, go ahead.
Like, because I feel like for me, just hearing what you're saying, it's like to not filter it through. So like, how do you not filter it through something? Because then it's like, well, I don't know. This kind of question is like, well, what is like, I don't want to sound like, I don't know, but it's like, well, what is love like materially, right? So like, how can you approach it without some sort of like filter? Like, I don't know if there's a way to like, purify it down to a thing. It's like, okay, this is the material, actualization of love, and then I'm gonna write that. Like, how do you even without some sort of filter or some sort of like um, juxtaposition, so what you're saying to me makes a lot of sense. And I love that you're talking about like how you approach it through nature, because, okay, so I love Carl Phillips. My favorite Carl Phillips book is Wild as the Wind. And I just, like, I look at a tree, I'm like, yeah, that's about Carl Phillips. Sex is happening somewhere in the right, looking at that, right? So yeah, that's brilliant. And you're wonderful. And I'm so glad that I got to be here. So yes.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I think we have one more question, and then we'll take a little 5-minute break and then open up for open mic. So I think the last question is from Deborah.
Thank you so much. Thanks. That was really lovely. I was very struck, Monty, by what you were saying about she, and that she doesn't stand alone, and she is described and defined, and you said a woman who claws for words. It's amazing stuff. I loved it. I had a question because I read, I think it was on 2035 Africa the Site, the first dedication poem that you read, and the version that you read or recited now is a little bit different. So I wanted to, I mean, the substance is the same, but the formation is a little different. So I wanted to know a little bit about your process and how you go back to poems and making revisions. Thank you.
So my process is that I very much allow myself to make a mess on the page to begin with. And then after that, I try to tighten the poem as much as I can with like the very limited resources I have. And I would say it's limited resources because if I'm too close to the poem, then I can't really see it. And so after that, I give it time. I step away from the poem. As much time as possible is the best, but that's not necessarily always possible. I think with the dedication poem, I wrote the first draft, I worked on the draft, and then even after having sent it to submission, when I was working on editing the book, I looked at it again and there were some things that I was unsatisfied with, and I wanted there to be a little bit more like narrative cohesion. And so I went in and I rewrote certain parts. And it's funny that you ask about that poem specifically because I kind of had a bit of a crisis. First of all, because I hate editing. It's so difficult, and it's also like when is the poem finished? The poem is never finished. Poems are so hard to like edit and be like, okay, we're done now. And so I was like to my editor, I don't know. I went in and I redid dedication. Did I overwrite it? I don't know what I did. And he was like, it's fine, you're fine. So definitely processes, make a mess on the page, work with what you have, distance yourself from the poem, return to it, and also have another pair of eyes on it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for really fantastic questions. And thank you, Manti, for your answers. Really fascinating stuff. We're just going to take a 5-minute break, just a tiny one, for you to grab a cup of tea, to have some water, to do a big stretch. And then I would love to see you back here. And it's a really open space. If you want to read something that you scribbled on your notes app or on a napkin or a little serviette, or a little page of your diary. Honestly, we are really lovely people here. And we'd love to hear. As your host, I am very happy to be the sacrificial lamb. So I have a poem already for you. But yeah, let's take a little 5-minute break, and then I will see everybody back at 5 to 9, and then we can go from there. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.